Welcome, everyone, to the New Earth podcast, where we work to inspire humanity to reclaim its power in order to transcend all of these limiting systems that are around us and to be able to co-create the kind of earth that we are all worthy of living in, one that is made of harmony, abundance, and unity. Now, my next guest, Marilynn Johnson, is going to speak exactly about that and go specific into how we can all live in a state of peace, what the mechanics would be behind that. And I know everyone wants to know, well, what would that be? How can we actually do that? There is a roadmap. She is explaining all of it, and it comes specifically from what's called the Baha'i religion, which is a religion that actually marries together all of the concepts of all of the religions to say, hey, listen, we're all one. We've all come from the same place. We're all going back to the same place. We might as well recognize all of the original truths that we were taught to us before they were all buried. So what's amazing about Marilyn is that she has helped to uncover what all of those truths are. She was originally from Oklahoma, lived there during the civil rights movement. So she has seen her fair share of adversity. She was a jazz singer. She was an actress. She was also someone who studied everything from psychology to astronomy and is unbelievably well-versed in being able to put together and co-create with us the new earth. I feel so honored that you have agreed to be my guest. It's so meaningful to me, not just because of your energy, but also just, kind of what you represent. And I feel like we almost have to do a little bit of background explanation on like what Bahai is for everyone who's listening, because I remember I was listening to a recording of, I want to say it was like a 1984 Hopi prophecy. It was Lee Brown, and he was talking about the shaking of the earth. He was talking about like the first, second, and third kinds of shakings, which is essentially all that we've been going through for like the past 100 years, like all of the different kind of like challenges that we've been feeling globally. And they had prophesized then in 1984 that we would get to this now kind of a point where the globe would almost be at a tipping point, where we would either be kind of like blowing ourselves up and having to find any place to live, or we would find our way to unity. And so he was saying that there was one group in particular that he had thought, and that the Hopi elders had agreed and all prophesized that would be able, if anyone could, to bring together all of the groups and be able to unify the globe, and it was the Bahai. And I remember this was so like vivid to me because I was standing outside. I think I was like pulling weeds or something. This was like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and I was like, just like in the first few years of what felt like some kind of like waking up for me, but it felt very hard and very lonely and very difficult. And I was like, I need to find me like those people, like maybe those are the people. Find Bahai, and I like Google Bahai. Yeah, I'm like looking up Bahai because I'm like, no one understands like the way that I feel, and it sounds like the Bahai have got that stuff kind of figured out, and that that's how I found Jan and got turned on to all of your unbelievable concepts and the understanding that we are one, and that we've all come from the same place, and that we're all going back to the same place, and that Buddha is no different from Jesus, from Muhammad, from Krishna. I mean, like they're all literally, it's the same energy with the same messaging, but somewhere along the way, very early on, it was divided up for the purposes of power and control and money. And folks were kept in almost like a place of fear because of it, if they didn't subscribe to certain rules. And so if you can go a little bit into the Baha'is concept on unity, religion.
You're very right in how what you're talking about when you're speaking of what Buddha and Christ and Muhammad and Jesus, from the spiritual standpoint or divine standpoint, all of these, what Baha'is call messengers of God or manifestations of God, they all come through the same source. they all come at different points of time in man's social and spiritual development. Okay, take for instance, if you believe in a creator or a divine being, a source that supersedes all of our understanding and wishes to share with us the gift of knowledge and truth and the gifts that come from being in the light, man has to develop to a point where he can understand in a way that he can understand.
Right.
It's as if, take for instance, you have an infant when it's born. It has no teeth. Its digestive system is immature. It's very, very new in its own human development. So you wouldn't dare give a newborn baby a porterhouse steak, right? Because he isn't physically able to chew and digest it. Well, take that same sort of analogy or metaphor and apply it to spiritual things or divine, let's say, call it the divine will of God.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever man first came on the planet, and we're not sure when that happened.
Right. That's a whole other podcast.
That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
So let's think about this. Whenever man appeared, he was in his very, I don't want to say lowest development, but the very basic or the start of his development. Mankind couldn't understand at that point in its development what the idea of transportation on a complex level. Things were very simple, I would imagine. And so therefore, the creator would entertain man, or not entertain, but divulge to man in a way that man at its point of development could understand.
Mm-hmm.
And those are spiritual truths. Now, once the spiritual truths are given, I don't know what those spiritual truths were at the beginning. The far as I can go back to is maybe to Abraham, the time of Noah, or Cain and Abel. Let's talk about Cain and Abel, maybe. And when maybe in that time it was, you don't kill your brother.
Right.
Pretty basic.
Rule number one.
Just don't kill your brother. But as man developed, certain laws also came into play that helped man not only progress spiritually, but socially as well. You take there are Baha'is who can certainly talk about this on a more sophisticated level than I can, but this is what I have gleaned from it. When man gets a truth from the divine, and he's given that truth, and after a while, man gets muddied with that truth. The truth gets muddied. The truth remains the same, but somehow as man progresses, the truth gets muddied. So what Baha'is call the greater covenant, God doesn't ever leave us alone. So he sends another messenger to reiterate the truth, because the truth got muddied along the way. Somehow or another, something happened, and somebody misinterpreted something for their own benefit, and the truth was not gleaned to be what it is. And then man developed a little bit more socially. If you look at the history books, when Christ appeared, there was so much energy released. That's another thing that happens to the planet and to man's development, is when these manifestations of God, these manifestations of the source of the light come into play, they expound this humongous amount of energy spiritually, as well as an intense amount of social and material growth. Look at how Christ inspired. Look at the masters of music, of art, of science. All of these humans received all of this, or were inspired because of this enormous amount of energy that comes to the planet when God manifests himself in human form.
Right. Wow. Wow. So well said. And I know we were talking a little bit about how, I mean, Jesus Christ himself can be considered a mystic
He
that.
was.
Yeah, and like no one really knows that, and so if you want to share a little bit more about that kind of hidden mysticism, because I think that's really the kind of truth that Baha'i would seek to bring to the fore, that I think a lot of traditional religions have, I want to say, almost, turned into the opposite. Did you see that thumbs up?
No.
Wow,
Oh,
look
I
at
see
thumbs
that.
up. Did I make that?
Oh, wow, that's
That's
great.
pretty cool. I'm like, is the
Where's that
universe
from?
giving this comment a thumbs up? That's kind of strange. Because I almost feel like that's where the divine occurs, where like we get this kind of information, and then all of a sudden, someone will take this information and kind of, use it for their own personal gain. As
Absolutely.
as we look at Christ as a divine mystic, disappeared for like 30 years. No one ever talks about where he went. We now know he studied, like with mystics. So I'll kind of give you the floor on that.
Oh, I think this mystic studied with him personally.
Right, I
I
know.
think
I
they
feel like
believed.
right, it was the other, like all of the Gnostics. Yeah, yeah,
Yes, and well, I think to be to be clear, I think mysticism plays a part in all of religions.
yeah.
It
Hmm.
plays a part in Judaism. It plays a part in Buddhism. It plays a part in Islam. I mean, you have the Sunni. What is it? Is wait, the Sufi mystics. I
Yes.
believe now. I'm not completely sure, but the divine beings, they are mystical because of the fact that they are divine and they come here in human form to teach us so much. Even, when Christ spoke about if you have the faith of a mustard seed and you tell that mountain to move and you believe that that mountain will move, that is speaking in mystical terms.
Yes.
That is, and not only did he speak in mystical terms, he spoke in metaphors. Christ spoke in parables also. And Christ was so deep. He brought to the world so much more than the forgiveness of sin, where I think a lot of people really get caught up in. To me, in my understanding, Christ came to show us how to live and
Yes.
to live in the light.
Yes.
That's what he came to do, to show us how to live in the light. Uh,
Yes.
and and I think that's what the manifestations of God all do, to help us turn toward the light, the source, because this realm of existence is illusionary. It's an illusion. It is not the end all of everything. It is like practice for the real exam, which comes after death.
Yes.
And that's where mystics have been. We put mystics on a pedestal because we feel like they have this innate ability to do things that we cannot do, and to a certain extent, of course, the manifestations of God are beyond our understanding. But there's an element, there's mysticism in every human being. We all have that ability to tune in to the spiritual world and get our joy and our sense of who we are as spiritual beings if we tap into the mystic aspect of ourselves.
Yes.
That's how. That's what I believe.
That's so well said. And I feel like, yes, there are many religions like the ones that you list that encompass that, which is why I've been drawn to all of the ones that you've just talked about. And I know that you have as well, and have studied across them. And the concept within that is specifically what you've just said. And it's that simple, which is we are not separate from God. We are an aspect of the divine creator in this 3D form, living in what feels like the only reality. When in actuality, we are here just to play a role so that God or source or the universe, whatever it is that you want to call it, knows what it's like to experience this reality through you. And our responsibility is to be able to tap into that divine energy that you're talking about, to just know that, where I feel as though many traditional religions are cutting that out, where the concepts are God is outside of you and that you need to do a whole bunch of certain things in order to feel that joy. That's already your birthright to feel when you tap into that universal energy that's already alive inside of you. That you need to, go to this kind of building, or you need to pay this kind of money, or you have to follow these kinds of rules. And that, the folks that are not doing this, there's something wrong with them. And I think that that's where we get into some issues, because when we are living that way divinely, tapping into our inner mystic, we are living in a state of health, essentially, because
Yes.
that is the true essence of our soul, which feels like bliss. And that's what it feels like when we're, quote, on the other side. And that is what allows us to give us physically a state of optimal well-being, that I almost feel like if everyone knew that like we wouldn't even have to depend on like the pharmaceutical companies. Like, if we knew the energy that resides inside of us, and the fact that when we tap into that divine creator that we are, we would realize that we're actually manifesting this entire reality, and that we wouldn't have to live in a place of fear, or we wouldn't have to like acquire all these things on the outside to feel this joy that already is us. And so that's why I feel like folks are turning away from traditional religion, because they want what we're talking about, but they're not finding it there.
Well, I think when you say traditional religion, do you mean in terms of fundamental understanding, or not being able to truly grasp the essence of religion?
I think
Because
like it's like if I just go to a Jewish temple, I'm not going to be told anything that we're talking about. Like if I just go to like a Catholic church or a Methodist church, I'm not going to be told any of these things that we're talking about. I'm going to be told that the God that I'm almost reporting into is a God that would punish me if I, wasn't doing certain things. And I was raised that way, when in actuality, I'm worthy of feeling the love of God the moment I wake up in bed.
yes, 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 yes. I certainly understand what you mean by that. One thing, though, that the Baha'i faith it doesn't differ, because words, we can get caught up in words. It doesn't differ, but it expands on the role of religion.
Hmm.
That these manifestations and these religions are part of what we call progressive revelation. Remember when I said earlier, we were talking about babies, you can't feed them steak when they're first born, right?
Right, right.
Okay. You couldn't tell Abraham when he was going up the mountains to kill Isaac that there were going to be, you can fly in a plane and cross the desert.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a very, that would be beyond his understanding at that
Right,
time in
right,
his own development. Spiritual truth is one. It's always one. It's not multiple. It
right,
isn't divided. But God gives us a little bit at a time that we can understand that according to man's own capacity, not because God doesn't think, I mean, he's God. And we are dependent upon him. This is, a lot of us have a problem with that, with the ego, because we have to subvert the ego to truly tap into the divine. That
right,
requires some
right.
sacrifice. That requires sacrifice and self-knowledge to know that. But
Yes.
the point I'm trying to make is that this progression that Baha'u'llah, who is the founder of the Baha'i Faith, talks about, is that from the very beginning of man's life, God has prepared man in stages to accept where we are now. Baha'u'llah says this is the age of maturity.
Yes.
Okay, we couldn't, back in Christ's day, there were donkeys and you walked where you had to go. Nowadays, we can fly, we can use a submarine, we can get on the internet. The world is smaller in essence. So, from the very beginning, that man's spiritual development has been to prepare man for where he is today, and that is to understand that we are all one. We couldn't explain that, couldn't be explained when they were running around like that newborn, because they didn't have the capacity to understand. I guess they were still dealing with the wheel and making fire with rocks. And I'm giving these extreme examples.
No, you're so right. Because we needed, we'll call it like traditional religion, just for like lack of a better term, to essentially build all of those things that you're talking about. Like
Exactly.
we needed that. We needed to create cities. We needed to, get better at technology, create infrastructure. Like all of this was part of the plan, we'll say. Yeah,
Exactly.
I totally
Exactly.
agree with that. Government was created for that. You have corporate world was created for that. Our healthcare system, like all of this hierarchies, right? Were all created and put in place to build the world that we're in. So then they play this perfect role to kind of lead us up to exactly what we're up to now, which is what I feel like you're saying, because we've almost done it to the point, and it kind of comes back to the Hopi prophecy where we've done it too much. Like we've gotten too far.
Yeah, we're out of balance.
Right.
All these spiritual truths, they all talk about love. Christ talked about love thy neighbor.
Yes.
All of these are spiritual truths, but they were also social laws. So
Mm.
now we have this planet where we're all humans, and it's time to think in terms of humanity as a whole,
Yes.
as a collective, because that's where we are.
Yes.
Now, 500,000 years from now, I don't know. Maybe there's some aliens from another galaxy.
Right. That's it. Yeah.
We got to get our act together before we can,
Yeah.
People may look at this and think, oh, well, they're way out there. Well, maybe we are, but we probably are correct being way out there.
Yeah.
We cannot.
Yeah. We had to get to the tipping point. We had to get to the tipping where we are too reliant on the outside circumstances and conditions to be a certain way in order to allow ourselves to love ourselves or to feel joy. Like we've gone too much the other way. And that's why I feel like, folks will turn to religion to try to figure this out and may not necessarily find what they're looking for. And I feel like they're turning more and more into spirituality or mysticism, to be able to receive almost like okay, here is your golden ticket to say, yes, it's in you.
Yes, exactly right. It's the entire human race now is our calling to learn to live in harmony and peace. War serves no purpose. War is savage, it's barbaric. And to think that even now some will embrace war as a tool to acquire something material. And to me, in this stage of our development, we are asked to be more than that.
Yes.
If there were war, it would be war, and this is according to the Baha'i perspective, there would be a council of nations. And if one country invaded another country, all the countries would come to the help, the assistance of that country that had been invaded. It's like in a family, if someone hurts someone in the family, the whole family comes to try to assist, or should. Most people do. Let's not even talk about war. Let's just talk about basic human rights, the ability to have housing, the ability to eat, just to to survive. That should be a right, not a privilege.
Right.
And on this planet. But there are those who would think, oh, well, they have to do this. Well, it's not they, because they is part of us. It's we.
Right.
And if they are suffering, the collective, I'd like to call it collective, suffers as well in some way or form. And so I think I may have lost my train of thought, but
you're so spot on, because the only reason why we have war is because we believe that this illusion is real.
Yes.
And we think that we don't have enough.
Exactly.
And we actually do have enough. We're just told that we don't have enough. And we've all agreed to a monetary system where we need to have a value on paper, like these little pieces of paper, which we've all agreed is important. And we've all said that you need to have a certain amount of it in order to get access to something that we actually already have enough of. And it is our own divine birthright to have. And what kills me the most is the fact that land belongs to everyone and no one.
Yes. God didn't make these divisions.
Yeah, like countries are ideas.
Man did.
Yeah, countries are ideas. We talked about the indigenous cultures that
exactly.
And I would love for you to talk further about that, because I just think it's so genius. And I had said that when we had first spoken, that there were indigenous people living in Staten Island, they now found, from 8,000 years ago, which of course, and no one's talking about it. They have found so many different artifacts across so many different decades that no one ever put it all together. And now they finally just admitted that the largest burial ground in the Northeast corridor that is now landmarked, but no one knows about it. There's no statue, nothing there, because I walk it every single day. The largest indigenous burial ground is right there on the southern tip of Staten Island. And no one even knows about it, and no one's honoring them. And what kills me is that when the Europeans first came over, right, they were pretending as though they were going to share this land and learn from all of the beautiful folks that accepted them there. And all of those beautiful folks
bait and switch.
Yeah, they were like, I am willing to teach you about, this land. We are trading together. I welcome you. There is more than enough room for you to come and live with us. They even signed an agreement that they thought that they were going to be living there, cohabitating together. But really, that agreement was them signing the land away.
Yes.
And then the Europeans were like, so what this means is you all need to leave, because where you have thousands of people living, it's still happening. Where you have thousands of people, that's why we're fighting. I actually could only have like 6 people living there. And it's going to be me and my family and my best friends. And what I just don't understand, and this is what you would explain so beautifully, is how one culture of people would be so warm and accepting and welcoming with the love and joy, which is what we'll call that Christ consciousness flowing through them, to say, we can share this land. We have more than enough. It's more fun when we do it together, versus the other side saying, no, I need to bait and switch and actually have this land all completely on my own. And I feel like this is why we're at the tipping point.
I think for that division between the higher and lower self comes into play.
Yes.
When you think of indigenous people in America, I'll say in America, who learn to live in harmony with the land, and that's because that's what they knew.
Right.
And maybe because the land was so plentiful. And I honestly feel like they had a understanding of the spiritual world by just the way they lived. Yes. They were so in tune with nature, the plant, the sky, the water. That was part of that's what made them who they were. That's who, and that is the essence, all of us. If we are given the tools to help develop that. People, if you go, say for instance, you go, I do a little traveling. And pardon me, people in some so-called third world countries, not all, some are content with their level of living in terms of they grow what they eat, they use only what they need, they take only what they need, they give back, and they try to live as harmoniously as they can. I don't know when that shift happened to where that we became less agricultural in our economy, but something happened to where we've lost that ability, if some of us ever had it, excuse me, to develop those parts of ourselves that require a certain way of living. I think the Buddhists call it the right way, right action, right thought, right way of living. Excuse me. Something happened, and it may have happened with the beginning of the factories. And I think it was something materialistically that happened. And it appeared to our lower nature and worked, well, we can do this now. We can do this faster. And you know what? We can do this faster, and we can also do this cheaper. We may not have to do this as well because we can get by with just this. You can't do that in an economy which depends on growing what you need, farming or ranching. It's pretty basic or pretty simple in terms of excuse me. You get what you grow. You get what you eat what you grow. It's not unusual when in farming people, when something happens to one particular farmer, the whole farming community comes together and helps that person because they realize the importance of that.
Yes.
Yeah. Something happened to us where we have become so individualistic and turned away from our communal type of living, our community-based living. This is causing, in my opinion, a lot of the mental illnesses, a lot of, remember in the 80s, greed was good. I mean, that was the slogan. Greed was good. Get as much as you can, get and acquire as much as you can by any means necessary, so to speak, because all the focus was on material. There was no focus on character. There was no focus on integrity. There was no focus on justice or attributes, I call them, or virtues. Those things somehow or another became less and less important, and to the point that even if a person now behaves in a so-called right way, they're looked upon as being stupid because you're not going to get ahead if you do that.
Right.
Who wants to get ahead?
Yes.
How much money is enough? And how much money is so much to have that that the individual can honestly live knowing that he or she has so much and others have nothing. To me, that's the scary part.
Yeah, and be okay with that.
And be okay with that and go, oh, well, I got mine, you get yours.
Right.
This is not how we were created. And this is going back to the essence of truth and spirituality. Yes. If you look at all of the manifestations, they talk about how we are to treat one another, how we are to treat our possessions, how we are to truly be. And in essence, if we are truly understanding the true essence of religion and are seeking to exemplify and manifest that in our daily actions and speech, this whole world would change. But the problem is, and I think you said it very well at the beginning, was that we don't understand the mystical aspects of religion and how everything we do we say is energy, and it has an effect on the whole.
Yes.
It doesn't go away. It
So
doesn't,
well said.
energy
So
never
well
goes
said.
away.
Yeah.
If you, I think what it was, I read many years ago about negativity. Negativity can be contagious. One person starts complaining, there we go. Unless another person is in tuned and aligned with their spiritual best, you will succumb to, you'll start complaining too, or you'll be negative too, or you won't think the best. And it all goes back to energy, and it's divine energy that we all have. And until, I believe, as a whole collective, that we embrace the fact that we're more than just get up in the morning, go to work, get paid, go travel, do what you need to do, be kind of crooked on your taxes, run that red light, things that are set up for structure, until we realize that these actions have an effect, a spiritual effect on us, we're going to keep being in the mire that we are in. And we'll either get it, or as you say, it'll be to the point that, Baha'u'llah says some certain things can happen that will cause the limbs of mankind to quake.
Right.
But we can change that,
Right.
if we choose to. But we have to choose that within ourselves, and then be ready to stand up against forces. And I'm not talking about specific people or organizations, although they may fall into these forces.
Right.
I'm speaking in terms of being in tune with what we were created to be, and that's to know, love, and serve God. And we do that through our actions. We don't do that.
Can you just move the, yeah, there you go. Because I'm only seeing half your face, and you're so beautiful, and you're so spot on with everything. Keep going. Preach, my friend. Keep going. I'm gonna give you a podium. I give you a podium next.
Oh,
Yeah,
no,
you're speaking my language big time. I love that you're on this podcast. Thank you.
but we have to look at the energy of our words, energy of our actions, and the energy of our thoughts, because it affects all of us. It's like a chain reaction.
Yeah.
Think about it. I don't know that much about physics, but I do know for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Yes.
So I want my actions to be based on love and justice, and not on gossip, backbiting, and putting people down, and being untrustworthy. These are things we all can take into an account individually and as a community. But until we realize that acquisition of material goods, there's nothing wrong with having money. There's nothing wrong with having material things. The question to ask ourselves is, how do we acquire that?
Right.
Do we acquire that by make it impossible for others? Do we acquire it by illegal or unethical means? And so, but okay, as long as it's, some people think as long as it's not illegal, then it's okay. Well, if it's unethical, we pay a price for that too.
Right. Right. And I think we're willing to sacrifice time with our families. We're willing to sacrifice our health. We're willing to sacrifice joy for that external. And I feel like that's where, the line had to be drawn for me, because I was that person up until I was 40. And that's where I got like this high blood pressure diagnosis. And I didn't even really realize that I was missing my whole life in exchange for everything looking and seeming perfect on the outside. And I had all of the things that everyone said, if I had those things, that I'd be really happy. And I wasn't happy, and I was miserable, and I wasn't present for my family. And I was becoming ill, and I was told to go on medication. And it was only in me deciding to not take medication and saying, well, I've got myself here, I'm going to get myself out of it, was the only way that I started to find out that there was an energy that was inside of me that I was ignoring, and that the joy that I was looking for on the outside was always on the inside.
Exactly.
Always
Exactly.
there. That's like the big aha joke. And I feel like it comes down to like self-love and self-worth, because if you don't believe that you are worthy of feeling joy without having certain external conditions being met, then you're never going to allow yourself to tap into that spiritual self that you are, which is your higher being, which is attached
Yes.
to the universe, which is where we
Yes.
can get back into a state of health, which is
Yes.
what got me back into a state of health. And everything changed for me then. When I started to go within, I started to get an unbelievable appreciation for my life, because I was able to
Mhm.
tap into gratitude. I could feel that even if I didn't have anything. And I didn't, because I left my job. I got rid of the second car. I stopped getting Botox and the highlights and like all those things. And the thing that really kind of confused me was when I was sitting in meditation, for so often I would feel, and I was raised Jewish, and I've said this before, what felt like Jesus sitting in my body. And I was like, I don't like understand. I don't know how he knows me, like I don't really, and it was only through doing more and more research and talking to folks like you, where I started to learn that there is a universal energy that comes with information. We'll call it like an infinite data set that we can tap into when we go within, that resides in our heart. Like our heart is the sender and the receiver of it. And when we get into that, not only are we living in a state of health and living in a state of joy, where we're like, oh my God, I now know who I am. I'm starting to remember who I was. I'm starting to remember that I'm
Oh,
right.
yes.
I'm starting to
Yes. Yes.
remember, like all the things that, my talents that I put away, that I told myself that I'm
Yes.
not allowed to do because it's not worth money. And I'm starting to be those things. And when I'm doing that, I'm doing it in a way where I'm sharing my truth and my talents in the form of love, right? Because it feels so
Yes.
good, but that's my soul just speaking.
Yes.
And
Yes.
what
Yes.
happens is I start manifesting, because what you're saying is true. Like quantum physics, really simple, like law of attraction is whatever it is that you are a vibrational match for is what you attract. I start attracting all the synchronicities, all the right people start coming, so I could like write, and so I could speak, so I could have a podcast, like all these different like unbelievable energies of love get reflected back to me. And it's so unbelievably powerful that
Yes. Yeah.
I feel like if everyone just knew that we would be able to start walking away from needing all of those things on the outside,
Yes. Yes.
to the degree that we do, to the point
Exactly.
that we could say, okay, I don't need to sit on a piece of land to feel this divine energy that's inside of me. I don't need to kill for it, because I am a walking manifestation of it. We all are. That's kind of like the big, like, haha joke of it. And that people are just being programmed. They're being born as human babies as we were. They're just being told that you can't have that feeling unless you kill for that land. You can't feel like you're a part of our group or our family, or you can't feel safe unless you murder. And that is where we need to start having a deep sense of compassion for all
Yes.
of those folks that we're told are our enemies. That we're
Yes.
told that.
The others. The
Yeah,
others.
but in
Yes.
actuality, they're just like we are,
Yes, they are.
just
They
trying
are.
to find that joy that's already
Yes.
living inside of them. And
Yes.
so like this is where like I'll turn to you and say, well, how do we send that over to them, without actually being there? Like, how do we start to create the shift where we can all start to tap into that, what we were told we're not allowed to feel unless, we pay this money, or we follow those rules, or we go to this building, that's been kind of hidden from us for the purposes of basically supporting what I like to call like a top 1%. We keep our heads down, we just keep doing our work, we keep doing what we're supposed to do. We're almost like use like batteries or cows or something. We time out at like 82 and we're done. When in
Yeah,
actuality, when we live like this, we could be living for hundreds of years as it is in the Bible, just doing what we love because we feel purposeful.
that's so that I really like you said that we feel purposeful.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think that is key. Purpose. Our
Yes.
purpose is
Yes.
more than these material things that we do so much detriment to our true self to
Mm.
acquire, and educating those who have this wealth that it's not, you have so much wealth. What are you doing? Are we using the wealth in the best way? How are we using our wealth? Are we using our wealth to educate? Are we using our wealth to help recover, regenerate? What are we using our wealth for? And I mean our material wealth.
Yeah, I
If
agree.
if we were to truly align with our spiritual selves in the way that God, the creator, the higher being, however one may want to designate this power in the universe that we cannot even begin to grasp, that goes
Right.
beyond our understanding. If we could only manifest those good qualities. Now, we're going to have the bad, the negative, the ones not so good. I'm not going to call them bad, the ones that are not so good. Baha'u'llah says, evil is the absence of good. That's what evil is. So if we manifest the good in ourselves
Mm.
and help to manifest that in others,
Mm.
how this would cause such a chain of a change, of true change,
Yes.
not
Yes.
the kind that's here today and gone tomorrow. We're
Yes.
talking about the way that we relate to each other, we relate to the planet, the way we relate to every sentient being on the planet, every sentient thing, which we can do if we so choose to look within in terms of manifesting what God's messengers asked us to do and looking for the truth, not the stuff that we've been thinking it's the truth. We've been
Right.
told, and we agree that it is because people hear so many things. You hear it for so long. Some will think, well, that's the truth. No, that's not the truth. You've heard it a lot and you begin to accept it, but don't give in to the program.
Yes.
When we feel pain, when we feel disappointment, when we feel lack, so to speak, these things are really opportunities to delve within ourselves for something higher. If we don't have these opportunities, if we always got everything we wanted and we live life just, let's say, without any lack, what have we learned? What do you take with you when you leave
Right.
the planet, when
Right.
you leave this realm? Some people don't believe there is another realm after this one. Well, okay, maybe you don't believe that there is another realm. Okay, that's your choice. But how about while you're here, let's try to make this the best realm that we can
Yes.
possibly
Yes.
make it
Well said.
while we're here.
Well said.
That wouldn't that be a great thing?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Instead of spending all this money on wars and oops, sorry. Oh,
No, you're good.
sorry.
Yeah, you're
Uh,
good.
Instead of spending money on wars, spending money on how we can help change the face of the planet spiritually.
Yes.
How?
Yes.
How can we do that? Can
Yeah.
we? Abdul Baha, who is a major figure in the Bahá'í Faith, says, we've gone to war for so long. How about we try peace and see what happens? Let's try something different.
Yeah.
Let's try. With all this climate change that is happening, God help those in the Caribbean. I think there's another one headed their way. I think it's called Raphael. Maybe it's already happened. But what I'm trying to say is this. With all the things that are happening on the planet, and we've been told that there will be a major lack of water in the next 25 years. Instead of all this money going to bombarding every place, to sit down and figure, okay, how are we going to survive?
Right.
How are we going to survive? How are we going to
Yes. We waste too much time on choosing a side and trying to get as much consensus from others as to why those people should be on that side with you.
Oh yeah, we do.
And
I want you on my side.
Yeah.
Well, how about the side that where we all kind of live?
Yeah, just the human side. There's really, in actuality, only one side. And the thing that, like, I have never met one person yet who is like, yes, I really want to keep fighting.
Easy to say when you don't have to send your child or like, why?
No, what I'm saying, like, no one that, like, I know and my husband's from Israel, like, no one there wants to keep fighting. Nobody, just generally, humans do not want to fight. Like, that is something that we have been made to feel as though that because all these things on the outside are the things that make us have an identity, that people respect us and that we have joy from, we have overvalued it to the point where we would kill for it, sacrifice our lives for it, our health for it. That's where we're at. And when you talk to people one-on-one, that's why I do this podcast, no one ever says that they want to keep fighting. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and waiting on a different result. And if I go to someone in Israel, and it's like the younger generation, they actually would love to just hang with anyone. And I have seen Palestinian children on the beach in Tel Aviv, sitting amongst themselves, not wearing a bathing suit, still fully clothed. But you know what? They want to be there because, again, the human nature is love. We're born like that. We are born believing that we're all one. Until at some point, someone is like, well, actually, they're not part of our group because they're not.
Yes, exactly.
That's the problem. Yes. And that's why I love the Baha'i, because Bahai brings it all together. Yeah. And it's, if you could kind of leave us with, what kind of tips and tricks do you use to, like, tap into your higher being? I know you had mentioned, like, maybe going on a silent retreat, like that kind of a thing. And then B, if you had to tell me what the new earth would look like for you, which you kind of touched upon.
My sense of peace comes from knowing that all of these things that are happening to me and to others in this realm is for our perfecting. And I know people will probably think, how can death be for your perfecting? How can the suffering of another be for your perfecting? Well, if you don't, pardon me, if you look at it from just the point of view that death is an end all, then perhaps I could see their cynicism. But I don't see that.
Right.
Things that are happening to us are to help to awaken us to our higher selves.
Yes.
This is it's not punishment. It's a call to examine, to look beyond just the surface, to look beyond just the here and now and think of, what if this were a different way? I pray. I pray, I meditate, and I try to be calm as much as possible in terms of when I hear things that are that make me sad. When I think of all the things that are going on in the world, for a long time, I was in a very, very deep depression. I thought, my Lord, it just devastated me. Now I'm to the point I cannot control that, but I can pray about it.
Yes.
And I can help awaken other people like we're doing today to seek out something more than what is at face value in this world, and to be attuned into our higher selves.
Yes.
To read scriptures that I believe come from God, that tell us how we can live our lives, how we can help perfect those parts of ourselves that need training. I mean, we all are born with a higher and lower self. And of course, there's a Native American, indigenous saying that, man is born with two wolves, and a little boy asks dad or something, and which one wins, because they're at war, and it's the one you feed.
Yes.
So if you're running around feeding your lower nature, thinking of just you, what you can get, how you can get it any way possible, who you can get over on, and how much you can acquire, and just, running over your fellow man to do it, that's feeding your lower nature. Yes. But if you're feeding your higher nature and you're thinking, okay, what can I do to be a better person in terms of my everyday interactions with others? That's a start. And then that start is like a flame. And the more that you fan that flame, the brighter that flame gets. Mm-hmm. And it starts to roar. And guess what? When you're on fire with wanting to do something right and good, that flame can jump to the next person.
Yeah.
It's like a light.
Yes.
And it becomes this whole, what is that? That whole domino trick.
Yes, yes. Or like the butterfly effect.
And it becomes a complete movement.
Yes.
And that's where I want to see us be.
That's so well said. And that's so powerful, because when that flame travels around the world, right, to the folks that keep on fighting and have been told, well, if you fight and you kill, you're going to be happy and accepted, and you're going to feel good. Like all these, and that's never happened. Like it never happens.
No.
They feel that way. If they could start to, even for 1 second, tap into that inner flame, because we have sent it to them. And I know that we can do it through meditation, and we can do it through intention. And it's leading with compassion first, to remember that.
Yes.
Then
absolutely.
I know, like, through the quantum field, through the electromagnetic energy field that is around this earth, that is vibrational, that is attached to our heart center, there might just be someone on the other side that could actually feel that vibration that is meant for them, and allow them to feel that flame, and allow them to feel that sense of joy and that love that's coming from within, and allow them to maybe put their gun down and say, what the heck am I fighting for?
Yes, exactly.
Because I already have it in me.
Yes.
If enough of us do that, it doesn't have to be everyone, but if enough of us do that, we got ourselves a new earth.
And we'll have ourselves a new earth and a new way of talking and problem solving. Not blaming, but solution oriented. Not it's those people. No, it's not those people. It is how the system is. So let's change the system from within in this particular way, because we can do it.
Yes.
And we will do it.
Yes. We will.
We will.
Just us having this conversation
yesterday.
Yes. We want it to happen already. And we realize, the longer it takes, the more it's for our growth.
Yes.
We keep telling ourselves that. But even just like what you said, I love what you said before about like words being energy, because even just us having these words, I know I've spoken to Janice about this too, just this kind of conversation does manifest that world. And that's why I do this. And I'm just unbelievably thrilled that you were on to be able to share your deep wisdom and knowledge. You're so incredibly powerful. I really appreciate it. We're right at time. Any closing thoughts?
The earth is but one country, and mankind its citizens. Baha'u'llah.
That's so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome. Love you,
Thank you.
Alana.
Love
Thank
you.